welcome to this NMC OSCE tutoring video. My name is Hannah. I'm a university lecturer, a UK registered nurse of 20 years, and I've been an NMC programme lead as well. And I'm sharing with you some of my teaching and tutoring to help you succeed in your NMC OSCE. Obviously, really difficult exam, very expensive exam. So I'm hoping these videos are helpful. I also do private independent OSCE tutoring one-to-one, and that's from a full package of tutoring in person and online to just maybe a single session or an hour to help you go through any stations that you're finding difficulties with. And I also offer research support. So if you've trained somewhere else or self-studied and you're on a second and third attempt and want some additional support, then please do contact me. My details are at the end of this video. Okay, enough of that then. So I'm going to do today the Braden pressure ulcer assessment station. So this is one of the written clinical skill stations in the adult NMC OSCE. Let's start then. So we're going to do the Braden score, which is part of the pressure area assessment and clinical skill station. Sometimes does have a relatively high referral rate because of the Braden score aspect of it and just not interpreting the information and doing the score correctly. So I'm going to work through a worked example with you as well. So this is an 8-minute silent written station, so no verbalization, you might be pleased to hear. And in this station, you're going to be given a scenario and you're going to have to do 3 things. The first thing is you're going to need to read that scenario and based on the information on that scenario, complete the Braden tool correctly and work out and calculate the risk from pressure damage development using that score. You then will be asked to identify the most vulnerable areas at risk of pressure damage, and you need to identify 8 different areas in order to secure a pass. And you'll also need to identify signs that may indicate pressure damage is occurring, and you need 7 signs in order to get a pass in the station. So the Braden assessment tool is a pressure damage assessment tool, and it's used to predict the risk of developing pressure ulcers, or pressure damage is what we say now, really, in patients. And it assesses 6 key areas, and each category is scored from 1 to 4 or 1 to 3, depending on the category. And it's like an inverse score. So the lower the patient scores, the more high risk they are of developing pressure damage and pressure ulcers. And that's different to some other pressure assessment tools like Waterlow. The higher the score, the more at risk the patient is. So you might be more familiar with that tool, for example. So I'm going to first we'll go through the areas. So you have to assess your patient for sensory perception, moisture, level of activity, level of mobility, nutrition, and then friction and shear. So we'll just go and have a look at the full assessment tool first and go through that. So in your NMC exam, you'll get a copy of the assessment chart, which will look similar to this, might be a slightly different layout, but we'll have all this information in, okay? As with all your NMC documentation, make sure you've put the patient's name and hospital number in the top. And there might be a section to put the date is normally in there as well. So just look for that key information, make sure it is completed. Otherwise, it will be a critical fail. So the first area is sensory perception. So this is the ability of your patient to respond to meaningfully to pressure related to discomfort. So and it's kind of closely linked to really their conscious level. So if you've got in your patient scenario a patient that is totally unresponsive, does not moan or groan, totally unresponsive to painful stimulus, or they could be sedated, so in your scenario, a patient could be under sedation, then they would be scored L1, okay? To score 2, they need to be responding only to painful stimulus. And when you start to look at the Braden, it's really important to pick out these key words from your scenario and match your scenario to the scoring system. This is where often nurses fail because they don't clearly identify the wording correctly. To score 3, that patient's got to be able to respond to verbal commands, but cannot always communicate discomfort, okay? Or has some sensory impairment that limits the ability to feel pain or discomfort in 1 or 2 extremities. So an example of this could be for maybe someone that's got spinal cord injury, and so they have got sensory impairment maybe to their lower limbs if they've got a spinal cord injury. And so they're not able to feel that discomfort in one or two extremities, which would be their legs. And then 4 is no impairment at all. So a patient that can respond to verbal commands, has no sensory deficit, and has the ability to feel and voice their pain. So you'll read your scenario. I'm going to go through a work scenario with you, and then you'd work out where that patient sits, and you put your score in the end here. The next one is moisture, and again, it's about reading that information carefully. So to score 1, they're constantly moist, so the skin is kept moist almost constantly. So this is the key here, almost constantly. That's the key word here, by perspiration, urine. Dampness is detected every time the patient or client is moved or turned. So that's the key information you're looking for in your scenario. To score a 2, very moist, it says skin is often but not always moist. And that exact wording should be in your scenario, or it should be very similar. So there isn't like a lot of uncertainty about where you would score that patient. And it says here that the linen must be changed at least once a shift. And so this is important. This is once a shift. And in 3, it's the linen is changed approximately once a day. That's a different time frame there. So again, picking out that key information. And then 4 is skin is usually dry and linen only requires changing at routine intervals. Next section is activity. So is your patient totally confined to bed? Okay, so are they sedated? Have they got an injury where they are confined to bed, maybe a fractured hip and they're waiting for theatre? Are they got a reduced level of consciousness and therefore are being nursed in bed? So read your information and find out if they're confined to bed. Chair fast would be their ability to walk their ability to work is severely limited, or non-existent. They cannot bear down weight and they must be assisted into a chair or wheelchair. Okay, so 1 is they're totally bedbound, wouldn't be able to get into a chair, and 2 is they can be assisted into that chair or wheelchair, but their ability to walk is severely limited or non-existent. 3 is they walk occasionally during the day, but for very short distances, and they spend the majority of each shift in a bed or a chair. And 4, again, is just someone that can walk outside the room at least twice a day, or inside the room every 2 hours. So it's really important for your activity and your mobility to really identify those keywords so you can identify the right scoring. So mobility is slightly different. The mobility is about making body movement changes in the position that they're in. So not about getting up and walking about, but maybe moving changes and redistributing that weight. So 1 is they are completely immobile. So they can't make any changes at all in their body position. Okay, so they're totally immobile in the bed. They can't even like move their arm or, wiggle off their bottom, for example. Very limited is number 2. So the patient makes occasional slight changes in body or extremity position, but unable to make significant changes independently. So it could be that your patient, can move a little bit of their foot or their arm, but they can't make a change such as rolling onto their side to relieve pressure that way. 3 is makes frequent, thorough, slight changes in body position. Okay, so they can do that and they can do that independently. So they don't need a nurse or staffing to support them to do that. And 4 is they can make major and frequent changes in position without any assistance at all. So look in your scenario, is it saying it needs 2 members of staff to move the patient? Is it saying that they're independent? And find that information. The next one is nutrition. So there's quite a lot of information in nutrition. To score 1, which is very poor, is they never eat a complete meal, or they rarely eat more than 1/3 of food offered. Can also apply to someone that is nil by mouth, okay, or someone that is just on clear IV fluids. Okay, so just look for that key information again. 2 is they've got an inadequate diet, so rarely completes and eats a meal, and generally only eats about half. So very poor is eats more than 1/3, rarely eats more than 1/3, and inadequate is that they generally eat about half. And they might have some dietary supplements as well. Okay. And then 3 is adequate. So eats over half. You see how the wording is different. For 3, it's over half. For 2, it generally eats only about a half. And then 4 is just normally eats every meal. doesn't refuse a meal, and kind of no issues there with nutrition. The next one is about friction and shear. So this is thinking about how we move that patient in the bed. So what's the risk of shearing? But also that patient is self-moving and slipping down the bed. That is where they're going to get friction and shear, because we should be using manual handling aids to prevent friction and shear. So if they require moderate to maximum assistance in moving, if it's saying that 2 members of staff are repositioning this patient in the bed, then that is, number 1, okay? Or they need full equipment to support them moving and changing position up in the bed. So 2 is they do move, or but it's quite feeble, or they require some minimum assistance. But they do maintain a good position in the chair most of the time, and then you only slide down in the bed or the chair occasionally. So if it says your patient is constantly sliding down the bed and needing repositioning with 2 members of staff, that would put them in that number 1. So if it says, that they just move down occasionally but maintain a good position in the bed or chair, that would put them in a number 2. And 3, this is the only one that's scored out of 3. There's no problem. They can move independently in the bed and the chair, and they've got muscle strength to kind of lift themselves up and to maintain that good position as well. Once you've added everyone up each one up in the box, you need to put your total score in, and you need to, obviously, as with all your documentation, make sure you print your name and sign as well. So that's just gone over and explained the chart a little bit. Now we're going to look at an example together. Like I said then, when I was going through that chart, it's really important to read the scenario carefully, and that is difficult when we're stressing under time, but you have got time in the station. And look for those keywords in the scenario that match the wording in the Braden assessment tool. So we've got a scenario here. So we've got Natalie. She's an 82-year-old lady admitted to hospital after a fall at a care home where she lives. She has broken her hip and she's confined to bed. She can occasionally make slight changes in her body position while in bed. The care home says she rarely eats a complete meal and generally eats only half. She occasionally takes dietary supplement drinks and looks malnourished. She is alert and able to communicate with you appropriately, responding to all commands. On inspection, her skin is dry at present, but Natalie is occasionally incontinent of urine, requires a linen change once a shift. She constantly keeps slipping down in the bed and needs regular help with repositioning and moving up the bed. So the first bit of information we're going to look for is sensory perception. So I've highlighted that here. So she's alert and able to communicate with you appropriately, responding to all commands. So if we went to sensory perception, we would put her here, wouldn't she? So she is able to respond to verbal commands, and she's alert, and she's able to voice any feelings of discomfort. So we'd score her a 4. Next one is moisture. So again, highlighted this here. So on inspection, the skin is dry at present, but Natalie is occasionally incontinent of urine and requires a linen change once a shift. So that would put her as 2 actually, because it says linen must be changed at least once a shift, not once a day. So we're taking that information that we've got and applying that best to the scenario, which would score a 2. So we've got a 4 and a 2. Then we're going to activity. So we know she's broken her hip and she is confined to bed. So she's totally bed bound at the moment, and obviously not getting out and sitting in the chair. So that would mark her here, number 1, as confined to bed. Next there is mobility. So we know she's confined to bed, but what about her mobility in that bed? So she can occasionally make slight changes in body position while in the bed. So it says she makes occasional slight changes. So that's going to put her here as number 2. It doesn't say makes frequent changes, okay? It says she makes occasional slight changes. So we're going to score her as number 2 for mobility. And now on to nutrition. So I highlighted this again. So the care home says she rarely eats a complete meal and generally eats only half, and she occasionally takes dietary supplement drinks. So on nutrition, we're here on number 2. So rarely eats a complete meal and generally eats only about half, and she has some dietary supplements. So that's where she sits. She only eats about half. So that scores her another 2. And then friction and shear, so she constantly keeps sliding down in the bed and needs regular help with repositioning and moving back up the bed. So she's definitely not a 2, does she? Because she needs more than minimal assistance, and she doesn't maintain a good position in the bed or chair by herself. So she's constantly moving down and requires assistance to be moved back up again. So that does put her as a number 1. So we've got our total score for each area then. So we need to add up that score. So we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we've got a total score of 12, which does make this patient high risk. Again, you don't need to verbalise anything in this station. So just make sure you've correctly added up your scoring correctly, and you've put your name, signature, date and time. And just double check it, because the scoring is the most common area of fail for this station. And then you just need to leave enough time to complete the other part of the station. And I would do this bit at the end, because if you are tight on time, you can very quickly write out your answers. But if you are rushed for time, it is quite difficult to read that scenario and do your scoring correctly. So do your scoring first and then go on to your other 2 questions. So you will be asked to identify the most vulnerable areas at risk of pressure damage, and you need 8. So just think about all those areas that we would naturally assess as a nurse when we're moving a patient. So things such as heel, sacrum, elbows, buttocks, you know, the temporal region of the skull, but also the occiput at the back of the skull as well, back of the head, toes, ears, spine. So you only need 8 to pass the station. So that is should be a relatively straightforward part of the station for you to do. Then other bit you need to then do is to demonstrate you understand what it looks like when a patient is developing pressure damage. So these are things such as like your persistent erythema, so redness of the skin, non-blanching hyperemia. So when you put your finger onto that red area, you know, it doesn't change colour to white and reperfuse. Obviously, any colour blisters, any form of discoloration, localised heat and warmth in the area, localised swelling, localized induration, so any localized hardening as well, any purplish, bluish localized areas, that's obviously quite advanced pressure damage. And also if there's localized coolness, which occurs, you know, at the very severe end of pressure damage, which is when tissue death has occurred. Again, you need to remember 7 points of that in order to pass the station. So these are things you can pre-learn before your exam. So my top tips, like I said, complete the Braden score first and get that secure whilst you're not rushing for time. Read your scenario carefully and look for keywords. Make sure you put your name, signature, date and time on your Braden assessment. If you miss that, it is a fail, unfortunately. Learn your vulnerable areas and signs of pressure damage so you can confidently write those out at the end of the station. And if you haven't got access to practice examples, if you're studying by yourself, you can write yourself your own practice examples and try and practice this to time. I think that was helpful. As with all my videos, I'm available for tutoring, and I am getting quite booked up now. So just bear that in mind if you're thinking about contacting me. And again, I can do anything from in-person training, online kind of blocker training, to just a single session if you just, you know, an hour or 2 hours, if you just wanted to run through some key aspects of the OSCE or to practice. Can also do mock OSCE and can also offer 2nd and 3rd attempt supports if you practiced or trained elsewhere or have self-studied for your 1st attempt and need some help to get through your 2nd and 3rd attempts, then do drop me an email, hannah.ames@outlet.com.